Hey, good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you're at. Welcome to today's DMI University webinar on sequence of returns risk. I'm Glenn Setchfield, VP of Marketing for DMI. In case you don't know, DMI is a wholesaler or IMO that's been in business for, I want to say 38 years now, Eric, if I got that correct. It's been a
Indeed.
while. And DMIU has been around not quite that long, but we've been here for a number of years supporting your educational needs. And today we're focusing on one of the most important and sometimes most difficult retirement risks to explain to clients. So, two retirees can begin with the same amount of money, take the same withdrawals, and even earn the exact same average return, yet experience dramatically different outcomes simply because of when the positive and negative market years occur. So, to help make that risk easier to understand, DMI created an interactive sequence of returns calculator. Advisors can enter a client's starting portfolio, expected return, withdrawal rate, and retirement age, and then compare what happens when strong market years occur early versus when a bear market occurs early. It turns a complicated financial concept into a clear visual that advisors can use during client meetings, workshops, or prospecting conversations. You've probably seen it in our promotions. We'll share that with you during the webinar. We'll also share with you how to qualify to get access to your very own calculator. But just to set the tone here today, guys, it's noontime. A lot of us may be even having lunch in front of the computer. So let's just pretend like we're sitting across from one another at the table, sort of sharing lunch together. Feel free to ask questions, use the Q&A function. We are here to support you. So we're here for you. So, and leading today's discussion is Erick Lindewall. He's a vice president of annuity sales at DMI. And Erick has extensive experience helping advisors identify clients who may be exposed to sequence risk, explain the concern without unnecessary jargon, and introduce strategies designed to protect those critical early years of retirement income. So, Erick, I really appreciate you being here, and I'm just going to turn it over to you, sir.
Perfect. Thanks, Glenn. And good morning or afternoon to everyone. Gosh, we're in the middle of July and we had a tremendous response to this particular webinar. And so, on behalf of myself and everyone at DMI, thank you for taking some time out of your day to talk about a topic that we think is vitally important for folks as they transition from the accumulation years into distribution years and retirement. At DMI, we believe that this is one of the singularly most important topics, not only for our advisors to be comfortable discussing, but for your clients to understand. Glenn mentioned that, we've been talking about this concept for a while. And, for myself, I've been wholesaling, many of you may not know, I've been wholesaling annuities for, close to 30 years. This is a topic that, I've been speaking about for a long time. And it's something that's really important to me. And it's something that I'm passionate about because it's real and can have a tremendous impact on one's retirement. So sequence of return risk in a nutshell is, as Glenn mentioned, an opportunity for clients to have a really good outcome or a really bad outcome in retirement simply due to luck. So before I get into our couple of slides and then walk through the calculator, we want to talk about sort of the mindset that our clients have during the accumulation phase. Being patient and having a long-term outlook and not worrying about when the good years and the bad years happen during accumulation is, generally speaking, an accepted and appropriate approach for clients to have. If I'm an accumulator, I really shouldn't worry about the year-to-year ebbs and flows of the market. Rather, I should be disciplined and diversified and patient. And generally speaking, that's been a winning strategy for accumulators over their working lifetime. But what happens is, as we get to retirement, if we take that same mindset or we don't know that we have to change our mindset, we can experience some really bad results. So that's the fundamental shift that people have to think about as they're looking forward towards retirement. So let's kind of walk through that a little bit here. I'm going to share a couple of slides here. Bear with me. Okay, so, what we're looking at here, folks, is folks that are in accumulation. So you'll notice we've got Portfolio A and Portfolio B, and they're both starting with $100,000. And over a period of about 24, 25 years, you will notice that the portfolio's year-to-year returns are very different. Portfolio A comes out of the gate with a few poor years. Portfolio B comes out of the gate with some really tremendous years. But what you need to know about this particular scenario, although the year-to-year experience for each of these portfolios, and quite frankly, each of these clients is very different, they both averaged about 8% per year during this accumulation period. So although their year-to-year experience was very different, both portfolios arrived at the exact same place at the exact same time with the exact same amount of money. Simply put, when you're in accumulation, the sequence that you receive your returns, or when the good years and the bad years happen, really don't matter. So again, our industry beats this into our clients' heads. Don't worry about the good years and the bad years. Focus on the average long term, and you'll end up in a really good place. And simply put, that's generally true. So the problem starts when we get to retirement. So now we're going to take this person that's built up this nest egg, and they're going to start taking withdrawals. Now, there's a lot of different ways in which one can draw retirement income or income off of their investments in retirements. For many people, obviously, Social Security is a piece of their retirement income. If they're lucky enough to have a defined benefit plan at work, that's a piece of their retirement income. But for many of us, or quite frankly, most of us, the majority of our retirement income is going to come via withdrawals from the monies that we've saved. So for many, many years, the old adage was, hey, be diversified, grow your money long term, and then when you get to retirement, withdraw, I don't know, 5% a year. And generally speaking, you'll be fine because your portfolio is going to be able to sustain that. And the answer is, well, maybe that'll work out. So what we've done here is we've taken those two portfolios, and you'll notice they're starting with what was the accumulation ending value. So they're starting with this $691,000, and they are simply withdrawing 5% per year adjusted for inflation. Now, Portfolio B, the portfolio on the right, was lucky enough to start their systematic withdrawal plan in the midst of a really good market. So you'll notice that while they're withdrawing their annual withdrawals, their balance was still growing. And in fact, this is an example of where a 5% systematic withdrawal really worked out well. We get all the way out to age 90. This person has had steady, consistent, increasing withdrawals every year of retirement, and they've got nearly $2.5 million left in the bucket. That's positive sequence of return, and that is a positive outcome. Now, Portfolio A is doing the exact same thing. They're starting with the 691, and they're withdrawing 5% per year, adjusted for inflation thereafter. The only difference between these two outcomes is that Portfolio A was unlucky enough to retire in the midst of a bear market. So although the returns were better after the first 3 years, the damage done in the first 3 years by taking a withdrawal from the portfolio while the market was also taking a withdrawal was irreversible. And you will notice this particular client, by age 80, was completely out of money. And so again, I want to stress the return scenario here in the distribution phase is the same. Both of these average return scenarios are 8% per year. The only difference is the sequence of the annual returns. In fact, if you look at the returns on Portfolio A and Portfolio B, what you will notice is they are simply inverted. We simply flip-flop the return scenario over this 25-year period. and it changed the math tremendously. So really where that leaves us, folks, is, you can do everything right as an investor. You can save an appropriate amount of money. You can be disciplined. You can be diversified all the way through till you get to retirement. And then if you continue on that approach and start taking your systematic withdrawal, you will succeed or failure. Your success or failure depends largely on whether you are lucky enough to retire in an up market or unlucky enough to retire in a down market. So I'm actually going to pull that last slide up for a moment here. I accidentally turned it off because I want to make a point. So let's take a look at this scenario with portfolio A, because one thing you may notice is that these withdrawals continued even after the first few years of bad market performance. Now, is it reasonable to think that if this client just 3 or 4 years in retirement has a balance down to, I don't know, 365,000, is it reasonable to think that they're going to continue to withdraw the same level of income from that portfolio? Well, probably not, because I think at this point, they've recognized that they are on the freight train to zero. And so, this is a part in retirement where a client's going to have to make some tough choices. So number one, they can continue to take the income at the existing level and take the risk that they're going to run out of money. Or number two, they can dramatically reduce their withdrawals reflective of their new balance reality. 5% of 365,000 is not 37,000 and change. It's more like 18,000, right? So, for those people, that's probably the choice they have to make. But what if that $37,000 withdrawal was the final piece of my essential retirement income? Maybe I have Social Security and this withdrawal from my retirement assets. Now I'm 3 years into retirement and I'm now light about $20,000 a year of income. What do those people do? Well, some people can make up for that with other sources of assets or other sources of income that they may have access to. But for some folks, they have to replace that income because it's essential income. And that is sequence of return risk in a nutshell, is getting into retirement and then ultimately experiencing negative sequence of returns and having to change your retirement. We all have this vision of retirement, what we dream it to be, right? And that might require a certain level of income. But then, so that's the idyllic version of retirement. But we also have a version or an income level that is essential, right? The minimum amount of money we need each year for taxes, for healthcare, for food, for just living, right? To stay retired. And so for some folks, if they have to reduce their withdrawal, well, they've got to make it up. And they've got to make it up a lot of times with part-time work. I've told this story before because we've done this presentation a number of times over the last few years. And this is a very real story. This is in the early 2010, 2011, around there somewhere. I happened to be in a Home Depot on a Friday night and was with my wife and at the time my young children or teenage children. And we were picking out, I think, a new barbecue. And I had some questions between barbecue A and barbecue B. So I asked the gentleman who was helping me at Home Depot a bunch of questions, and he answered all the questions and went away to go get the one that we selected out of the back for us. And I had a little smirk on my face, and my wife said, "Well, what's the smirk for?" And I said, "Gosh, this gentleman is the face of sequence of return risk." And she asked why, and I explained to her. But the reality is the face of sequence of return risk lives in every big box store in America. I challenge you all to go to a Home Depot or a Walmart or a Lowe's and take a mental census of who's working there, who's wearing the orange aprons. But don't do that on Saturday morning at 10 o'clock. Do it on a Tuesday at 10 o'clock. I promise you 10 to 15% of the people there will be retirement age folks. And some of them are there because they want to be. And some of them are there because they have to be. That's the face of sequence of return risk. So really what we want to do is try to help our clients understand what this risk is. Now, does understanding the risk automatically solve for it? Absolutely not. There are a lot of solutions that can help mitigate sequence of return risk in a particular client's life. But I'm a huge believer in the following. Nobody wants to solve a problem that they don't know exists. So this conversation with clients to help them recognize what sequence of return risk could do to their retirement is essential and critical so that clients can acknowledge the risk, get it out on the table. Everyone acknowledges it's a problem that's worth potentially solving for. So then you, as the trusted advisor, can offer opportunities to mitigate some or all of that risk, giving them peace of mind in retirement. So what DMI has done and Glenn and team has done is create an interactive calculator that you can use to really illustrate what this risk could potentially do to one's retirement. So what I really like about this, there's a lot of things I like about this, but I'm a believer that most people are visual learners, right? And so what this calculator will allow you to do is sit with a client and walk them through some scenarios. So as you notice, we can select a starting nest egg. So folks are about to retire or recently retired. We can enter what their nest egg is, and we can select what their expected annual rate of return might be in retirement, right? Now, I want to just stress this is net return, net of all fees, right? So, and then we can select what level of withdrawal percentage they need. So let's say I've got $1 million and I say, hey, between my Social Security and maybe a small pension I might have, I need another $50,000 a year to connect all the dots in retirement. That's what I need, right? And so you'll say, well, that's about a 5% annual withdrawal off your $1 million nest egg, Eric. So we think we can earn about 8% a year. I would submit to you that for a retiree that maybe is investing in a balanced portfolio, 8% net of fees might be a little ambitious, but I'm going to go ahead and leave it there. Let's assume, I'm really lucky and I'm going to average 8% per year. My annual withdrawal is 5%, and we're going to adjust my withdrawals for inflation. These two lines represent what is going to happen to my portfolio based on whether I retire with the bear market happening early or a bull market happening early. And you can see very, very different outcomes based solely on whether I'm lucky enough to retire in an up market or unlucky enough to retire in a down market. And you'll notice that as I play with these numbers, you'll notice the chart is dynamic, right? So, you can show someone, hey, if we are able to average 8% and we withdraw 5% a year, a bad market, a bear market scenario early could potentially have you running out of money completely at age 81. Well, maybe we want to manage more conservatively so we don't have really bad years early. Well, what does that do? Let's back the return down. Let's back the withdrawal down. So you can really give a client a good visual example of outcomes based on luck. And I use that term importantly because while we can diversify and we can allocate based on what's going on in the market, quite frankly, none of us know when the next bull market is going to end, or whether when this bull market is going to end, or whether the next bear market is right around the corner. And I'm using these slide bars, and these lines are moving around. But the cynic in me would say, hey, well, I see those lines moving, but show me the math. How are you coming up with these numbers? So you'll notice Glenn and team have just included a little tab here where you can actually show the client the year-by-year math. And this is going to look very similar to what you saw on those previous slides. Now, to be fair, you'll notice our bull market numbers are really strong and the bear market numbers are really bad. But the reality is I'm sure everybody on this webinar today can remember years like this and years like this, the really good years. So the reality is this is not an absolute guaranteed outcome one way or the other. This is a conceptual calculator to help illustrate to a client what negative sequence of return risk could potentially do to their retirement portfolio. We're not trying to scare clients. We're not trying to make clients feel better or worse. We're simply trying to help you educate them so that they can be aware of the risks that they face in retirement, and if those are risks that warrant being dealt with. So, how do we deal with sequence of return risk? Well, one way is with guaranteed lifetime income solutions. I started to talk about this earlier, but I'm going to go ahead and go back to it. And this is just Erick's mindset. I believe that retirement income planning really only comes down to two numbers. There's a lot of different strategies, and we can get really complicated with retirement income planning software and whatnot. But really, for anyone that's starting to look forward towards retirement, and folks, I'm 58 years old, so I'm not at retirement yet, but I can see the lights on the runway, right? And so, when I think about retirement, there's only two numbers that matter. What I call the want to have number, that's my hopes, goals, and dreams, that idyllic version of retirement that Jennifer and I have in our mind. That's the want to have number. And then there's the gotta have number. The gotta have number is what it's going to cost me for healthcare, to put food in our bellies, to pay our taxes, the essential retirement expenses. Essential retirement expenses care about one thing and one thing only. They don't care about which party controls Congress. They don't care about what the market's doing. Essential expenses do not care whether we're at war or peace. Essential expenses in retirement care about one thing, and that is getting paid each and every month, right? And so the want to have number in retirement really needs to be met with sources of income that are going to be there no matter what. So when you sit down with a client, and when I look at my own situation, I try to evaluate what income checks am I going to have in retirement that will always be there. Well, certainly Social Security to some extent may be there, right? If the client's lucky enough to have a defined benefit plan at work, that'll be there. And then that's it for most people. So that's where annuities come in, where you can certainly create a systematic withdrawal plan out of an annuity. And you don't necessarily guarantee that the annuity won't run out of money, because if they live long enough, it probably will. But you can guarantee that the check that they receive each and every month or year will last forever, for as long as the retiree or the retiree and his or her spouse lives. So that's the peace of mind approach that you can achieve with some of the solutions that we represent. But again, nobody, in my opinion, solves a problem that they don't know exists. So we really believe that having the sequence of recurrent conversation with clients, helping them understand what it could potentially do to their retirement income plan, and then finally having this tool where you can visually walk them through a scenario based specifically on their starting nest egg, their expected rate of return, and their expected annual withdrawal is really a great foundation to have this conversation with a client. And maybe it will be an opportunity to solve for the risk, or it might be a situation where their income needs and their starting nest egg are such that sequence of return risk doesn't pose much of a problem to them. Maybe their nest egg is, instead of 1 million, 2 million. And maybe they still only need to withdraw $50,000 a year. So now their withdrawal is only 2.5%, right? And so now they don't really have any risk, right? But we needed to have this tool to be able to customize specific to a client situation. That's where Glenn and team came in. So here's another great point that I want to bring up. We work very closely with agents and advisors all over the country. And quite frankly, if you're on this call today and we don't work together, we would love the opportunity to work with you. For folks that choose to work with DMI, you can have access to this, both certainly on our website, but you may qualify to actually have this tool embedded in your own personal website. So we can talk one-on-one on ways in which you might be able to qualify for that. So Glenn, that was 25 minutes, which is a little shorter than a normal webinar. We're not done yet, folks. But let me stop for a moment, Glenn, turn it over to you and ask you if any questions have popped up since we started.
Yeah, there have. Thanks for covering all that. I appreciate it. Yeah, so again, I'll share Eric's contact information here in a second. Also, the QR code over his head, if you just scan that, you can get his contact information on your phone that way, right there. And we do have a few questions, Eric, some good ones. Here's a great one. How do you show the solution to introduce an appropriate amount of guaranteed income? I think meaning, how do you like using all of these tools, everything from the calculator to the graphs that you had?
Sure, that's a great question. So everything that we showed you here previously is really conceptual in nature, right? To try to underscore the importance of potentially introducing some guaranteed lifetime income solutions. Where the rubber meets the road is when you call your DMI VP of annuity sales, either myself or any of my colleagues, depending on who you work with, and we like to get down to the granular level. I'm a believer. Well, let me back up. I have advisors call me all the time and say, "Hey, Eric, who's got the best guaranteed lifetime income annuity right now?" And my answer is always, I can't answer the question until I know about the client situation, right? And so we like to look at each and every case based on its own merits. So to answer your question, sir or ma'am, depending on who asked it, it all depends upon the age of the client, how much income they need, when they need it, how long of a deferral period is there, right? And is it single or joint? So we have a conversation. We talk about the case. We fine tune exactly what you're trying to solve for and accomplish for the client. And then our job is to go out and vet the entire product universe and come back to you with a best-in-class solution specifically for that client. With retirement income planning, every case is as unique as that client's own DNA. If it was an accumulation case, it's a little easier, but with retirement income planning, uh, we have to know exactly what we're trying to solve and exactly who we're trying to solve it for. I hope that was a good answer to the question.
Great answer. I appreciate it. Hey, and I'll take this next one. So the question is, how do we qualify? And they're referring to the calculator. So there's three ways. So if you're an active DMI agent, we can work with you on getting the HTML, and we'll try to produce it in such a way that it reflects your brand and your colors and that kind of thing. If you qualify, and the second way is if you qualify as a DMI licensed agent for marketing services, which is different level, our marketing team can actually help you to upload it and do all the connective tissue and all that stuff with notifications and all that kind of thing. Now, if you get licensed newly as a DMI agent, we can again get you that HTML sent to you and your digital team to upload on your end. So just wanted to clarify that a little bit, Eric, if that helps.
Sure.
But now I'm going to send one back to you. So uh, here's a direct question. I always make sure that clients who need income for their assets keep at least 1 year of distributions in cash to avoid selling other assets during a downdraft, especially in the case of IRA, RMDs. Will this help in any meaningful way?
Well, I mean, that is absolutely a strategy to help mitigate sequence of return risk. So if you remember back to that original chart I showed where the client's balance was going down due to poor markets, but they were continuing to take a withdrawal. Yeah, that's one way to avoid the negative impact to their portfolio. So is that an effective solution? Absolutely. Um, it's just a function of can that client do that in perpetuity, 1, 2, 3 years in a row, if they have, if we have a multi-year downdraft. That there's no right or wrong way to do it, right? What we're talking about is we want clients to understand the risk. And so once they understand it, they're going to take steps to mitigate it. What this question just suggested is a step to mitigate it. 100%. That's absolutely keeping some money on the sidelines. Another step is to have a chunk of the required income set aside in a guaranteed lifetime income solution so that even if the market is doing poorly, obviously with indexed annuities, that won't impact it. But you have peace of mind knowing the distribution, the income payment will last forever. So the answer is really C, all of the above, right? Unique to every client.
Perfect. Um, how does the deviation of returns adjust with the rate of return slider?
Well, let's take a look. Let's go. Let's go back and look. Let me pick the right box. Okay, here we go. And Glenn, I'm not 100% sure that this is the math adjust. I'm not sure it's dynamic or not, right? So here we go. Yeah, there it is right there. Okay, I was hitting the wrong slider. So whomever answered that question, you can see as I move the expected returns, it's changing not the sequence, but the severity of the ups and downs. Does that make sense? Um, and for if the person that asked that question, if that's not a sufficient answer, definitely ping me an email and I'll get with Glenn and team and we'll get into the guts behind the mathematics under the hood of the calculator. It's a good question.
Yeah, but we aren't trying to deal with past or future modeling or anything like that. These are,
No, it's random. It's a random varied return.
and you get to select the return,
That's correct.
right? So just to clarify there, because there were a few questions about that.
Mhm.
Um, do you think bucketing like income for life model overcomes SORR?
It certainly can help, right? So, bucketing or income for life, that strategy's been around. In fact, little known fact, our president and founder, Brian Donahue, was part of the team that invented that concept, right? And so, at DMI, we believe that that's absolutely a powerful way to do so. I guess one of the challenges is what are you using for the buckets, right? If they're annuity buckets, you're going to be good because you're not going to have market exposure. One of the challenges of bucketing with fixed annuities and then annuitizing is you're losing out on some of that growth potential of the market. So again, I'm never going to, you'll never hear me say that various strategies that aren't an annuity with a lifetime income rider aren't good. They're all effective ways to sort of create income levers that you can pull.
Perfect.
No, I for life's a great concept.
And then a question is another question is the software and the PDFs compliant or compliant approved for RIAs? I would we'll go, if you want to answer, I can follow up too.
Yeah, so I mean, everything that we create goes through, I don't want to take Glenn's thunder, but goes through preliminary compliance and suitability review. Anybody on the call that is registered with a broker-dealer, everything here would have to be reviewed by your compliance department prior to use. Okay, so let's be clear. If you have a FINRA registration, do not use this until it goes through with clients before it goes through suitability review. Glenn, if you want to answer on the RIA and insurance only side, feel free.
Yeah, no, I think it's approved, but it's always good for you to double check things on your side. For your firm, everybody's firm is different. So, uh, but we have done our own compliance review, and but I do like people to check double check on their own. It's always good to
Right.
have like belt and suspenders.
Right.
Um, so. I think that's most of the questions here. And we've gone a little bit longer than we wanted to go today. We were trying to keep it brief for everybody. You know what? Hang on though 1 second. Uh, let's share Erick's calling card here. So to reach out to Erick, you can call him at 781-919-2351. Again, 781-919-2351. And his email is elindewall@dmi.com. Feel free to reach out to him with anything. I mean, obviously, um, these tools are great, but the way you're having the conversation is important. And Erick can help with that. He can help with the tools, and then also with specific products that could help to mitigate risk. So I think this was a great call. We really appreciate all the engagement today. Eric, was there anything else you wanted to leave with?
I want to end with a simple thank you. So we've got folks on the webinar today that currently work with DMI. Your partnership is deeply appreciated. And for those of you that we don't work with, we're not asking you to make a commitment to anything other than an opportunity for us to meet, right? So we'd love to have a conversation with you, learn about your practice, and learn if there's an opportunity for us to potentially work together. The answer will either be yes, no, or maybe, and that's okay, right? But we love to work with people who value a deep relationship with an experienced sales team. None of us started yesterday. So, let's get to know each other a little bit, figure out if there might be some synergies. And if so, we would love an opportunity to work with each and every one of you. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much, everybody. All right, that concludes the call. Have a great rest of your Wednesday, and we'll see you on the next one.
Take
Take
care,
care,
y'all.
everybody. Bye bye.